Welcome to the swamp, my friends, and welcome if you're new. Today we're going to be reading some creepy and downright strange small town and college horror stories. As always, if you have a story that you would like to share in a future episode, be sure to submit your story at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into these creepy and downright strange small town and college horror stories that'll freak you out tonight. 5 Towns College Horror by Anonymous. I was a freshman at 5 Towns College in Long Island, New York in 2020 when the coronavirus pandemic was still occurring. It is a performing arts college. I majored in music performance with a minor in audio production. Not that many people know about this college. It has to be the worst college in New York if I'm honest. They overpay many people who can't afford college. They will accept anybody. Professors and advisors don't care about their jobs. They pass anyone and let them all graduate essentially. And the people who do study hard and graduate don't ever even get jobs with their majors. Worst of all, this campus used to be a middle school. I graduated this past May, and I am finally happy to leave that dumpy school. I started taking classes there in August of 2020. I first trusted this college to be a good experience, and I regret doing that. There were a lot of weird other students there who had horrible social skills, and there were a lot of different people smoking weed all day. I didn't like anybody there and their antics, but there was one person that I disliked more than anyone else. There was this 23-year-old freshman guy named Jeremy. He was a theater kid. People say he is a pretty creepy guy, and that you should always avoid him. Many other people told me he stalks a lot of the girls. I hoped he would never stalk me. But unfortunately, as fate would have it, that would become my reality. The first time I ever met him was in the school's cafeteria. He walked up to me as if we were best friends. He started off a conversation by saying,
"Hey, my name is Jeremy. What about you?"
I was a bit cautious because obviously I had heard all the rumors about his behavior. I remained calm, told him my name, and said it was nice to meet you. The conversation then went on no longer really. We just kind of told each other about our majors and kind of went our separate ways after that. Then my food came, I placed it in my food bag, and I went to walk away to where I could go be by myself. As I was walking away, he waved and said bye. I said bye back in a soft voice with a neutral expression. I was kind of weirded out, but, trying to put everything behind me. I turned back one last time to see him staring at me, and then I walked outside. I already got terrible vibes from this dude, heard a bunch of terrible stuff about him, and I want to clarify that the next time we see each other, I have absolutely no interest in talking to him. A couple of days later, I saw him again in the cafeteria. This time a bunch of people were there. He said hi again. I just said hi and was ready to order my food and not waste time talking to this weirdo. He then started asking me questions about how my day was and how classes were. I gave him simple one-worded answers like yeah, no, or nothing at all. I did not want to talk to him, and I was trying to make that very clear. Then he began to ask a bit more creepy and personal questions. He asked if I was single. Now, I have not answered this question, and I kind of just ignored him as I was ordering my food. Thank God the cook who works there asked if I was okay and what was going on. I basically told them nothing, grabbed my food, and walked out as fast as I could from the kitchen area into the dining hall. I heard Jeremy's order, and then he walked out right behind me. He then asked the same uncomfortable questions again, and I once again ignored him. It took him about 15 seconds to ask,
"Why are you ignoring me?"
Then another guy waiting for his food jumped into the conversation and told Jeremy to back off. "She has no interest in talking to you, dude. Beat it." That's when things escalated fairly quickly. Then Jeremy asked the other guy, "What, you want to fight me?" He replied in a very disgusting tone, "No, I'm just telling you to back off, bro." After this, the other guy got our food and walked with me out to another spot where he wouldn't follow. As we did this, we heard Jeremy grunt and stomp his feet loudly as he stood there, still waiting for his food. I thanked the guy for having my back when things could have worsened. He introduced himself as Connor. We had excellent small talk and then we walked back to our dorms. On an unrelated note, Connor turned out to be my boyfriend in the long run, and we're still a couple. About 2 weeks have passed and I haven't seen Jeremy since. I was shocked not to see him considering this college has basically maybe 400 students total, probably even fewer. I made a small group of friends with the kids in my major, and we talked about our majors pretty often. I felt more happy and safe at the moment, but I damn sure celebrated way too early. One night, I was returning from a party at a bar locally. I drove back to campus and arrived around 11 o'clock. I returned to my dorm and saw Jeremy doing nothing outside the college entrance. He then turned his head to me. He was staring at me intently, like a hyena. I felt more like I was being stared into, like he saw my soul and was just gazing at it. I then walked away quickly because I was freaked out. I got back to my dorm safely, luckily. A few nights later, things were getting a lot worse. One night, I heard a knock at my window. I felt like it was this Jeremy guy, but I wasn't 100% sure because it could be anyone. It was dark out. Knocking on somebody's window this late at night is very uncommon as it is. It could be a friend, and my curiosity got the best of me. I took a deep breath and pulled the shade back in one swift motion, only to see who? Jeremy. I threw the shade right back and fell back into place. How did he know where my dorm room was in the first place? I was pretty sure he never followed me. I was so terrified at this moment that I locked myself in the bathroom. I was even more scared because I was living in a single room. Luckily, Jeremy didn't live on campus as he lived nearby because he had told me this in prior months. I then came out of the bathroom about 15 minutes later. I braced myself to open the shade again. So I did, and this time, I felt relieved that he wasn't there anymore. It only got worse 2 nights later. After coming back from a late night choir rehearsal, I, of course, saw Jeremy standing right outside the dorm area. I ran for it as I unlocked the gate, and he chased me. Sadly, the gate did not close in time and he managed to get through it. I ran to my dorm hall. I hoped an RA would be present and sitting in the booth. Sadly, the RA was not there, but there was a sign that said, "I will be back in 10 to 15 minutes. I had to take a phone call." Of course they left, I said to myself. I found a perfect hiding spot. There was a lounge and a bathroom there. The bathroom was open, and a door stopper kept it open, so I hid behind that bathroom door. Yet again, the door to my dorm hall didn't close in time, and Jeremy had entered the building. He looked all over for me. He must have seen the bathroom but never walked in or saw my eyes through the slide. He then yelled an F word very loudly, and then left the building. I waited another minute to see if he was gone, and he was. I then entered my dorm room, and the window shades were open. I was happy to see he wasn't there. The next day, I told my friends about what Jeremy had been doing to me. I told them he knocked on my dorm window and chased me through my dorm. They were all appalled and agreed with each other that they would walk with me whenever I went somewhere. I felt so pleased with them. They were real friends and they cared about me. Nothing seemingly happened for a couple of days. But a few nights later, I was chilling with my friends in my dorm room as they were protecting me. We ate food, listened to music, talked, and played video games. This was interrupted by a couple of bangs at the window. I then whispered to my friends to turn off the music. I heard somebody outside the window yelling,
"Open up, I need to talk to you."
It was Jeremy's voice. We all stayed silent. He spoke up again.
"Open the window right now, or else you will have to face the consequences."
Thankfully, the window was locked. My friends and I all then went into the bathroom and hid. We silently called the campus police, which I should have done days beforehand when he knocked on my window the first time. As we were all in the bathroom, we heard Jeremy trying to open the window and break it down. Luckily, the campus police had arrived in just about 5 minutes, not even. We then heard a knock at the door and a person yelling, "Resident Life, it's all good now, you can open the door." This was not Jeremy's voice, and we all sighed in relief. I opened the door and told the head of the Resident Life what had happened. They said they would contact the school administration and try to have him dismissed from the college campus. He also told me that they told him to leave or they will call the actual cops. I thanked him because he was actually doing his job and being excellent. I then told my friends that it was okay now and they could leave. I hugged each one of them and thanked them all. The next day, I got some crazy news. Jeremy had been removed from the college campus and dismissed from the school. I jumped out of bed and loudly said, "Yes, let's go." While I pumped my fist, I was able to complete my college life without any more unsafe moments that could have put me in danger. However, I still hated college because it was just a bad school. Besides my creepy stalker encounters, I have not seen or heard of Jeremy since, and I want to keep it that way the rest of my life. Small Town Cult by Andy J. Let me start by stating the obvious. People can change for the better and the worse. For context, I'm a 21-year-old farm boy from a small town in northeastern North Dakota. I have one friend who's a few years older than me and is like my brother. To respect the privacy of those involved, I will not be using their real names. We'll call him Brady. Brady and I did have one more friend in addition to our dynamic duo to make it a Three Musketeers. We'll call him Carson. My story starts in the early summer of 2022. All three of us were happy at the time. Brady and I were living our best lives. I was farming with my dad and had a beautiful girlfriend to spoil. Brady was working at the town's pool and would occasionally hang out with a particular female coworker. Carson was working at the John Deere dealership several towns over and making good money. However, all good things must come to an end. My girlfriend became my ex. Brady had his summer fling part ways because she went to college. Carson also went off to college to be a John Deere diesel mechanic. We all sort of went on a 6-month bender due to dissatisfaction with the current hand life had dealt us. Here's where the story begins to heat up. One night, we hung around in my family shop, shooting darts and discussing life. That night, we decided to take our faith lives a bit more seriously. We all knew who God was and we believed, but our faith did not play a part in our day-to-day lives. Well, we changed that. We started going to church more and made prayer an everyday thing. One day, I was on my way home from my last day of college. Although I had reborn this sense of self-worth due to my rekindled faith, I still could not get over my ex to save my life. While driving, I got a call from Carson saying that he was going to some sort of Bible study at this old church he was a member of and asked if I wanted to come. I of course say yes. I tell him I want clarity on why I can't get over her, so I hope that he can pray for me and hopefully this study will help me figure it out. Now this church is loud. You can hear doors open, people walk on concrete floors covered by cheap carpet. It's not like the greatest building and is just super loud. The doors creak, all that stuff. Carson and I were alone, and he was praying out loud. When he prayed, "Lord, make your plans clear for Andy," that's me by the way, in regards to his past relationship. I heard a whisper say, "She's coming back." It wasn't in Carson's voice though. I asked him if he heard it, but he said he didn't. I chose not to believe that I was hearing things and sort of celebrated inside. Maybe it was an actual message from God. Fast forward 2 or 3 months, my faith would falter, and I would ask God for signs that if it was him I heard, please let me know. Whenever I'd ask, I'd see her in a town neither of us would be from or really have any ties to. It was at different times on different roads, so I know it wasn't her coming home from work. During this time, we had a worship service at church I heard the whisper in. This was also when Brady and I started to notice weird things. Carson began to be under the wing of a church pastor about an hour west of our town. Now, this pastor isn't your usual pastor. He's incredibly charismatic, like those evangelics. At first, he seemed to be genuine, a kind man, if you will. But how deceived we would be. Carson came to us one day saying he could speak in tongues and incorporate it into the services. Speaking in tongues, I guess, is possible, and not everyone can do it. So you can't imagine my surprise when I heard he said he was doing this. Carson then tried forcing us to speak in tongues as well. The final straw for my participation in the worship service was when Carson gave a sermon saying the congregation wasn't worshiping to his standards. Even after that, I still considered Carson a brother, I just looked at him a little bit different. Harvest started in the waning days of the warship service. He told me I needed to come, but I don't remember his excuse. I told him I couldn't because I had to go to Harvest, and this is my family's living. I can't just not go to Harvest. He asked me, "Are you choosing Harvest over God?" And that's what sent me. I told him no, but Jesus says if you don't work, you don't eat, and hung up. Carson dropped out of college and got fired because he wanted to read his Bible more. Bro hasn't had a job since Moses parted the Red Sea. Well, that sparked an argument. The next time we all got together, Brady and I confronted Carson about our concerns. Carson told me he hasn't been praying for my ex because he doesn't like her and because she's apparently too attractive for me, so he didn't think it would really happen. Thanks, man. I'm no Ryan Gosling, but I have a mullet, and, for Pete's sake, I've gotten women. We all sort of parted ways after that. Brady continued to hang out with Carson, but only because he wanted to be supportive. And props to you, bro. Brady would call me one night frantically telling me Carson doxed him and his family. His mom does yoga, and Carson and his pastor friend apparently don't like that. So, according to them, she's evil now. And so is his dad because he allows it. His dad is a pastor at a church in our town, and one of the wisest and kindest people I have ever met. Genuinely a good guy. Here is the meat and potatoes of the story. There's this girl. Her fiancé had broken up with her because he was in a very vulnerable and easy to manipulate position. You can probably guess where this is going. Carson and this pastor took her in. They brainwashed her into thinking her family was her biggest enemy and didn't love her. They told her that the parents wanted a boy and never wanted a daughter, and her parents named her after a male genitalia. So, they changed her name to Mary. Not only that, but they made her burn all her Harry Potter stuff because she couldn't enjoy fictional stories if she followed God. Not only that, but they made her burn this toy chest her grandfather made her before he passed away because it had a Native American dream catcher on it, and the culture is a part of the occult apparently. Mind you, she's 24, but still, it's a thoughtful gift from her grandfather that she no longer has contact with because of obvious reasons. Do you think that's all? Just wait. She now lives with this pastor and his family. Not only that, but Carson now believes he can tell if things are evil or not just by simply touching them. You may wonder where her parents are in all of this and their thoughts. They wanted to schedule an appointment with the pastor and Carson, but apparently they never have availability. He'll tell them, "Hey, that's no problem," until they ask to bring the pastor, Brady's dad, with them. Carson's pastor friend will then come between this and not let it happen. I'm sure if Carson's dad was actually able just to talk to Carson, he'd be able to break this spell or whatever. One day, Brady's dad and this girl's parents went to the pastor's church. What did they find out? Absolutely nothing. The pastor didn't think he had to tell them anything. When Brady's dad asked him why he had to drive an hour just to be kicked out, yes, he kicked them out, he was met with, "You don't want to know." Nothing much has happened since then. Brady and I are still friends and I consider us brothers. And Carson is just someone we used to know. We pray for him and everyone involved. I ask that you pray for them and also pray for my ex too. Nothing has happened there either. But you know what they say. Keep faith. Anyways, hopefully this story was interesting to you guys. Was It A Skinwalker? By Anonymous. I was at my grandparents' house in 2019. I was playing outside with my grandpa's dog, Patch, and playing fetch with him. The dog started snarling and barking at someone in the trees. At first I thought it was just like a coyote or something. So I grabbed my grandpa's .45 lever-action rifle and looked around after putting Patch inside the house. Now I did notice some deer prints, but they look more significant than any occasional white-tailed deer I've seen around the house. Now let me explain. My grandparents' house is on the edge of a small town about 5 miles away from the highway. Now back to the story. The footprints were in line with each other, but it almost looked like the front legs walked backwards. So I called my friend, who I'll call Tom for his privacy and not sharing his name. Tom is a paranormal investigator. He brought all of his equipment and went on the hunt to find answers at night. But I wasn't going to go unarmed. I grabbed my .44 Magnum with a pocket of 145 grain, 44 soft points. When he went about a mile into the woods, we saw yellow glowing eyes about 8 feet off the ground behind a tree. Now Tom was frozen in fear as this thing screamed out. It sounded like a baby and a crying dog mixed together. Now I won't lie, I did shoot at it, and this thing ran away. But I don't think I hit it, not even close. I was so scared and my hands were trembling. But I knew I needed to do something to try to get this thing away from us or just put some distance. I was honestly feeling sick to my stomach. After I shot, Tom snapped out of it. He said, "What the heck was that?" And I told him, I don't know what, but I've heard stories of things like skinwalkers and wendigos in the past. Tom replied with silence. We heard that scream again, and we ran out of the woods, not stopping until we got into the house. We didn't sleep a wink that night, and years later, I went back out there by myself and heard my grandmother's voice. I have to say that my grandmother has been dead since 2015. I broke down crying. I ran inside the house and locked all the doors. I kept hearing her voice from outside, saying, "Come outside, I miss you." I called the cops. I said I need help with something, or someone is trying to get into my house. About an hour later, I gave them the address. I heard banging on the door. They yelled, "Goshen County Sheriff's Office." I had my hand on my sidearm, absolutely freaked out. After I knew it was actually the cops, I felt more comfortable coming outside. When I went outside and started explaining what was going on, one of the cops said they heard a demonic-sounding voice, and when they were looking around the house, they saw claw marks on the side. Apparently, they even claimed to have seen what looked like an 8-foot-tall humanoid figure, a deer head, with flesh falling off. It smelled like rotten flesh, and they had no idea what it could have been. But when they looked back to get a second take at it, it was just gone. I'm sorry for how long this was. I hope you enjoyed sharing it, and thanks for letting me share my story with everyone here in the swamp. I live just outside Louisville, Kentucky, in a small town just across the Ohio River in Indiana. A few weeks ago, Louisville started to have protest marches for the BLM movement. Lots of people, myself included, downloaded a police scanner app to know what was going on in real time. At first, I just listened to different police departments in Louisville, but soon started checking out any town around Louisville for police dispatch reports. That's when things got weird. About 6 weeks ago, I was scrolling through different towns on the scanner, when at 2 a.m. on May 15th, I hear a 911 dispatcher send out a report. The dispatcher said a group of teens reported some type of creature stalking them. One cop replied and said, "Creature? How about a meth head?" I remember the chuckling of the cop, and I remember chuckling at it too. Then the cop replied again and asked for the coordinates. The police department I was listening to was from Jeffersonville, Indiana, a small city just across the Ohio River from Louisville. Jeffersonville was like most small cities in the Midwest. You know, God-fearing and with many drug-related problems over the last 10 years. So the meth comment by the police officer seemed to be about right. I figured either the teens or the person they were calling about was on drugs. Having nothing else to do, seeing as weeks in quarantine had rendered me bored, I continued listening, hoping for something entertaining to happen. Well, about 20 minutes had passed when a very worried police officer came over the scanner. "I don't know what is out here, but it is not a meth head. Send backup ASAP." The dispatcher then told the officer to change channels after that, and I didn't hear anything else about it. The next day I was on Facebook when I saw a friend reposting something about from the teens before. They recounted how they were walking by the waterfront Friday night when one of the teens in the group said they felt like they were being watched. After a few jokes on their behalf, some of the teens looked up and saw a giant creature up in a tree. They said it had red eyes, and once they noticed it, the creature jumped out of the tree and flew away. This was probably what most people laughed and mocked at. Myself, after reading it, got goosebumps though. I thought about how freaked out the cops sounded, and figured these teens might have actually seen something. Days would pass with nothing but the usual banter on the police scanner. A few crimes here and there, and protesters doing their thing. Other than that, There wasn't much to keep me occupied. Wednesday, the 20th of May, I had been unable to sleep, so with nothing to do, I sat down watching some television. After midnight sometime, I decided to open my scanner app, and for a short while, after checking channels, I came across another weird dispatch. This time it was from New Albany, Indiana. The dispatcher was looking to send an officer out to respond to a car wreck. What happened next really had me on the edge of my seat. The scanner jumped alive after 10 minutes. The officer reported he needed an ambulance ASAP. The wreck was an older model Ford that had ran off the road going at a high rate of speed. The officer told dispatch that the driver was in his early 60s. He reported that he felt the man was driving while impaired. The dispatcher jokingly asked, "What makes you say that?" The officer replied, "Well, the driver says he lost the road while fleeing away from a winged man-like bird thing with glowing red eyes." Laughter was quickly silenced from the dispatcher when the officer whispered into the mic, "Oh my God, I don't think we're alone. Send backup immediately." The scanner goes dead for quite a while, when suddenly an officer feverishly screams, Shots fired, I think I hit it." The dispatcher quickly tells the officer to change channels. Nothing but silence came after that. I gripped my phone waiting to hear more, but fell asleep shortly after. The next day in the local news, sandwiched in between news stories about politics and police brutality, there was a small story from New Albany. The news reporter said an officer, while investigating an automobile accident, was attacked. Upon other officers arriving on the scene, one of the officers was found unconscious. While surveying the incident, the other officers had seen a tall man running towards them after repeated commands to stop, and shots were fired. Then the news reporter said it was at that point the suspicious man disappeared. The reporter then interviewed a homeowner who saw the incident. The homeowner relayed that they saw something strange happen after hearing shots ringing out. They saw the suspect fly into the air. The anchorman back at the studio said, "Well, it seems like he had a few beers last night," and tried to sweep it under the rug. It was after this that I decided out of boredom to look up the description of the subject on the internet. So I typed into Google "winged man with glowing red eyes." What came up actually shocked me. I read on a few websites about a town in West Virginia called Point Pleasant. In several articles I learned that between November of 1966 till December of 1967, several residents had witnessed a moth-like creature with glowing red eyes. Some people described it as a creature with a 10-foot wingspan, glowing red eyes, and a man-like frame. I remember thinking, that's what people are seeing around here. I feverishly kept reading, and when I came upon this part, my heart almost dropped. December 15th, 1967, Silver Bridge in Point Pleasant collapsed, taking 46 souls with it. This news had me shaking my head. I kept reading other web pages, and there were several theories as to what happened. However, most pages feel this Mothman creature was an omen, some sort of warning or foreshadowing to the collapse of the bridge. This theory had me freaking out. You see, Louisville has 5 bridges crossing the Ohio River. There's the Big Four, the Lewis and Clark, the Abraham Lincoln, the Sherman Minton, and the JFK. A few years ago, the Corps of Engineers had to shut down the Sherman Minton Bridge for a few months because of structural defects. Then there's the Abraham Lincoln, which was just recently built, so who knows how well that one is. I know they finished ahead of schedule, and at least one person died during construction. I've now have to take it upon myself to drive to these bridges and see if I noticed anything that could be wrong. I'm not sure what to even look for, but I can't sit here and do nothing. I've also gotten a hold of the teenagers from the first sighting, and they have agreed to tell me their story. Thanks for listening to these creepy and downright strange small town and college horror stories that'll freak you out tonight. As always, if you have a story that you would like to share in a future episode, be sure to submit your story at swampdweller.net or the email you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that like button. The more likes this episode gets, the more YouTube promotes it in the algorithm, and that helps the swamp grow its ever-expanding waters. If you're new to the swamp, why not join us? Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new episode, as I upload them multiple times a week in all things natural and supernatural. If you made it all the way to the end of today's episode, be sure to comment down below letting me know what story was your favorite, and be sure to comment the secret code for the day, which is Yellow Owl. The funniest person using Yellow Owl in their comment will be pinned at the top per usual. Thank you guys so much for supporting the swamp the way you do. I couldn't do this on a daily basis without you guys. Don't forget to join me over on X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, Instagram, Facebook, all those fun places for behind the scenes content, and I'll see you soon with another creepy episode.